The police never expected a case to begin like this, with a French Bulldog staring them down, barking at something only he could see. Officer Thomas was sipping his coffee outside the quiet town's police station when he noticed him. A sleek black French Bulldog, standing still at the edge of the street, his deep brown eyes locked onto Thomas, unblinking. The dog didn't move. He didn't sniff the ground or wag his tail. Instead, he barked once, sharp, intentional. Thomas frowned. He had seen this dog before, always wandering, always curious, but never like this. There was something different today. Inside the station, Officer Madison barely looked up from her stack of paperwork. Probably just hungry, she muttered. But Thomas didn't think so. This wasn't a random bark. It was a signal. Then Gaston did something unexpected. He took a step back, then forward, then turned his head just slightly toward the street, and he waited. Thomas set down his coffee. The dog wanted them to follow. The town felt too quiet as they followed Gaston through the misty streets. Even the air seemed heavier, as if the world was holding its breath. Gaston moved with purpose, not a single wasted step. He led them past the bakery, past the town square, until the streets grew narrower and the buildings older. That's when the feeling set in, something was wrong. They stopped in front of an abandoned warehouse at the town's edge. Rusted chains hung loosely across the doors. A few cracked windows revealed nothing but darkness inside. "Why here?" Madison asked, her voice quieter than before. Gaston didn't bark this time. Instead, he sniffed the air. Then his ears flattened. A low growl rumbled in his throat. That's when Thomas noticed it. The chain on the warehouse door, it had been disturbed. Recently. Madison stepped closer, her fingers brushing over the cold metal. "This doesn't feel right." A shiver ran down her spine. And then Gaston froze. His nose twitched, his muscles tensed. A sound from inside the warehouse. Something or someone was in there. The warehouse smelled of decay. The air was thick, pressing against their skin like a warning. Boxes lay scattered, some overturned, some broken. Cobwebs clung to old furniture, but in the dust, footprints, fresh ones. Gaston sniffed the ground, following a trail invisible to human eyes. He moved carefully, ears twitching at every sound. Then he stopped. He let out a low, deliberate huff and tilted his head. Thomas followed his gaze toward a rusted metal box half buried under debris. He crouched, pulling it open. Inside were clothes, small coats, tiny shoes, children's clothing. Madison swallowed hard. These are from the missing children's cases. Thomas's grip tightened on the box. His heart pounded. Then, a sound. A door creaked open somewhere deeper in the warehouse. They weren't alone. The chase begins. The footsteps were slow, careful, hunting. Madison's breath hitched. "Did you hear that?" Thomas didn't answer. His hand hovered near his gun. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. A tall man dressed in black, his face hidden. He stood still for a moment, then took a step forward. In his hand, something glinted. A gun. Gaston growled. Deep. Dangerous. Then, he acted. With a sudden burst of speed, he charged toward the man, barking ferociously. The man flinched, just for a second. That was all the time Thomas and Madison needed. "Run!" Thomas shouted. They bolted for the exit. A gunshot rang out. Missed. Gaston was already ahead, darting through the warehouse, leading them toward the only way out. Behind them, the man cursed. His footsteps followed. They ran through the fog-covered alleys, Gaston guiding them with certainty. He didn't hesitate. He didn't slow down. Finally, he stopped behind a rusted fence. Madison and Thomas ducked, gasping for breath. Gaston stood firm, his eyes locked onto the warehouse. His ears twitched. Seconds later, the man appeared at the warehouse entrance. He scanned the streets. Then a growl. "Gaston." The man stepped forward, just as sirens screamed in the distance. He turned and ran. Within moments, squad cars flooded the area. Officers stormed in. The warehouse was secured. The case was cracked wide open. The silent hero. The evidence inside the warehouse was undeniable. It was bigger than anyone had imagined, a crime network hiding in plain sight, and it would have stayed hidden if not for Gaston. Madison crouched next to him, running a hand over his head. "You knew, didn't you?" Gaston tilted his head. She smiled. "I think you knew before anyone else." Thomas chuckled. Not just a good boy. A detective. Gaston simply huffed and trotted away, his red bandana fluttering in the wind. Watching him disappear into the quiet town, Madison exhaled. "Think we'll see him again?" Thomas smirked. "I think he'll find us when we need him. Because some mysteries weren't meant to be solved. Some were meant to find you. If you love mysterious tales like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Who knows, maybe Gaston's next adventure is just around the corner."